Hello and welcome to Yerushalmi Berachos Daf Mem Vav in the Ozohader print. I want to go back to two things that I spoke about and then talk about a couple of quick things on the blot that are all related. First of all, I talked about the beer of Rav Chaim Kanievsky Zatzal. I wanted to just clarify. I looked up the introduction and there's a couple of interesting things in there. First of all, the reason that Rav Chaim put it out on Yevomis is because his father, the Steipler Zatzal, who died in 1985, he had always wanted to put out a pirush that was simple, the simplest shot of just the simple Yerushalmi explanation, and he actually started writing something. And so Reb Chaim, in his honor, for his yahrzeit, when the Steipler passed away, Reb Chaim gave apparently a shir for that first year, and in that shir he covered. It seems I think I made a mistake and I said he started with Berachos and just did that, but he actually apparently gave a shir on all of Zeraim. And then one of the Talmidim who was there, who I believe was a relative of Reb Chaim, it sounded like it was his son-in-law, but I'm not sure. It says the name at the beginning of the Sefer. He actually compiled the notes, and Rav Chaim was very impressed with it, and he got permission to print it, and so he printed it. And that's when that story that I mentioned, that Rav Chaim stopped giving the shir, but apparently he kept writing. And so in his publication, he makes sure to include Hagos of his father, of a Steipler, at the end, and also Hagos of the Chazon Ish on Yerushalmi, which is very interesting. But I believe that a large part of all of Shas Yerushalmi that we have has been basically put out. A second thing that I mentioned was that I talked about this very hard to understand Gemara about Chana, since she was miskatzer in her tefillah, so her son's life was cut short. So I want to add two important clarifications. First of all, the Gemara says explicitly that that's only for a yachid. It doesn't apply for a tzibor. So for a tzibor, there's always the ability, the Gemara says it explicitly, that there's always an ability to be marben tefillah. And second of all, that shita is a das yachid because the next shita afterwards quotes Rav Yochanan and other Tanaim that say explicitly that it's not true, that kol marba b'tefillah is better, and so that is a das yachid that says that opinion, as hard as it is to understand that das yachid. And we'll talk about that. Sometimes there is a das yachid that says something that is very interesting, and we have to understand it in the right context. So that was going back by one blot. Let's focus on today's blot. So a couple of interesting shalos of the Gemara. And coming right off of Chanukah, if you're listening to this chronologically on the calendar. So there's a couple of very interesting things. The Gemara says that on Chanukah, we don't normally daven Musaf. But what about on a time that we are davening Musaf? Afal pi she'ein Musaf b'Chanukah, ma'asker shel Chanukah b'Musaf. Even though there's no Chanukah Musaf, but if you are davening Musaf, you should still mention Chanukah. Now we know it's not Ma'akev. We know Al Anisim is never Ma'akev. A lot of people sometimes get confused about that. But at least in davening, in benching on Purim is a shaila, not for now. But certainly on Chanukah, it's not Ma'akev. The Bavli and Shabbos stuff, Chaf Dalet and Aleph, also has the same exact conversation and also says the same thing to mention Shabbos. There's some very interesting shilos in the Gemara here, back and forth about Kriyas HaTorah, about Chanukah, Rosh Chodesh, Shabbos, what takes precedence, etc., etc. And then the last thing I want to mention for today is, again, a Das Yachid, that Rebbe Mefached La'avdan Amorai, Rebbe instructed his speaker, his Metorgaman, that you should announce Man Dematzli Yatzli Deramsha Ad Yom HaKaim. If you want to daven Marav, you could do it while the sun is still up. And this is we've talked about this before. First of all, we talked about the famous thing from the Ben Ish Chai, that when Yaakov Avinu was Nisakein Marav, he did it while it was really still daytime. Kiva Hashem had made the sun set, so which is an interesting thing in itself. But you find clearly that in the time of the Gemara, Rashi in the beginning of Berachos and the Bavli mentions this, and the Yerushalmi says it explicitly. I mean, he's quoting from the Yerushalmi that people would often daven very early, and they would daven in the field, and then they would come home and they would say Kriya Shema later, maybe Alamita, etc. So you see in Mefurish that shita that you can and should daven it early. Again, there's different opinions about it, but when we go through the Bavli, it's just, and Yerushalmi, it's very interesting to note sometimes opinions that exist, but that's definitely something that to keep in mind when it comes to Marav, that of course is not necessarily halacha l'maisa, but we do know that there are many people that say that you can in fact daven after Plaga Mincha, and many people daven early, and then you have a question of trying to repeat Kriya Shema according to this bond that you're going to say according to everybody, or at least lechatchila. All right, I hope that inspired you, and have a great day.